I was just 12 years old when my whole life changed, and I didn't even know it. That morning my mom packed my little bag with folded clothes and a pair of new sandals. She smiled like everything was normal. "It's just for the summer," she said, brushing my hair behind my ear. "You'll have so much fun at Uncle Ray's." I believed her. Why wouldn't I? I was still at that age where you trust every word your parents say. I thought maybe they needed some time alone, or maybe they were planning a surprise vacation for all of us. The car ride was quiet. My dad kept his eyes on the road the entire time. He didn't turn on the radio, didn't say much. When I asked if we'd go to the beach when I got back, he just mumbled something like, "We'll see." My mom glanced at him and then gave me a tight smile. Looking back now, I can't believe I didn't notice the tension in the air. But I was just a kid, too young to read between the lines. When we pulled up in front of Uncle Ray's place, I jumped out of the car, excited. I loved his big backyard and the old swing hanging from the tree. He came out to greet us, gave me a side hug and said, "You're growing up so fast, kiddo." I smiled wide, thinking I was about to have the best summer ever. My mom leaned down, hugged me tightly and kissed my forehead. "We'll be back next weekend," she whispered. I remember the perfume she wore, sweet and familiar. It stuck with me like a scent you can't wash off. But my dad didn't get out of the car. He just stared straight ahead, his hands gripping the steering wheel. I waved to him. He raised his hand halfway, then dropped it. No smile. No goodbye. It felt odd, but I didn't think much of it. They drove off and I kept waving until the car disappeared down the road. I didn't know it then, but that was the last time I'd see them for nearly a decade. The first weekend I packed my little bag again. I folded my clothes just like Mom had done and waited by the door. I asked Uncle Ray what time they'd be back. He looked up from his newspaper and said, "Soon, sweetheart. They'll come." I sat on the front steps for hours watching every car that passed. By evening I told myself maybe they were just running late. When the sun went down, Uncle Ray brought me a plate of spaghetti and said, "Let's eat, kiddo." I didn't want to eat. I just wanted to go home. The next weekend came and I packed again. Same routine. I waited and waited. Nothing. I started making countdowns in my notebook, drawing hearts around the weekends I was sure they'd come. But each one passed the same way, with silence. At school, when kids asked about my parents, I smiled like nothing was wrong. "They're just really busy with work," I said. "Mom's got a new promotion and Dad's traveling a lot." I repeated those lies so often I almost believed them myself. Uncle Ray never said much. I think he didn't know what to say. When I asked if they called, he'd clear his throat and say, "They will. Give it time." Then he'd change the subject. At first I tried to force the topic. I asked every day. But over time the questions slowed down. His answers didn't change and the silence hurt more than the truth might have. I remember my 13th birthday. I wore the same pink dress I'd worn the year before, hoping it would remind Mom of me. I waited all day for a phone call. A card. Anything. Uncle Ray gave me a small cupcake with a candle and a sweater that didn't quite fit. I smiled and thanked him, but inside I was hollow. That birthday was the first time I didn't cry in front of anyone. I waited until I was alone. Then came Christmas. Then Easter. Then summer again. Each holiday blurred into the next with empty spaces where my parents should have been. Every time I heard a phone ring or a door knock, my heart raced. But it was never them. Not even once. By the end of that first year, the waiting stopped. I didn't pack my bag anymore. I didn't sit by the window. I didn't mark dates in my notebook. Something inside me shifted, quietly like a candle going out. I didn't admit it out loud, not even to myself, but I started to believe what I didn't want to. They weren't coming back. And I had no idea why. Uncle Ray was never the kind of man who talked much. He had this steady way about him. He'd wake up early, fix himself coffee, and read the newspaper like it was a daily ritual that couldn't be disturbed. He didn't smile often, but he wasn't unkind either. He always made sure I had what I needed: school clothes, lunch money, a ride to school when the bus didn't come. On Saturdays he'd take me to the library and we'd spend hours there, not talking much, just reading our own books side by side. But no matter how many weeks or months passed, he never brought up my parents again. Not even once. First I kept asking, "Have they called? Did they say when they're coming?" But all he'd say was, "No word yet," and then he'd look away like the words tasted bitter. Eventually I stopped asking and it became this silent agreement between us. We'd talk about everything except the two people I missed the most. He was kind, yes. He never yelled or raised his voice. He remembered my school events, signed permission slips, and always had dinner ready. But he was also distant, like he'd built a wall that I wasn't allowed to look over. I started wondering, was he protecting me or was he hiding something? One night when I was about 14, I got up to use the bathroom and passed his room. The door was slightly open and I heard his voice, low and strained. He was on the phone. "No, she doesn't know yet," he said, then paused. "I can't be the one to tell her." My heart stopped. I stood there frozen, trying to breathe quietly. I didn't hear the other side of the conversation, just his words. That one sentence wrapped around me like a cold wind. I never asked him about it. I was scared of what he'd say. A part of me wanted to believe he was just protecting me, keeping something from me because he thought I wasn't ready. But another part of me, the one that had grown tired of waiting, began to wonder, was he part of it all? Did he know why they left? Was he keeping secrets for them? That question sat in my chest for years, heavy and unanswered. High school was the hardest. Kids aren't always kind, especially when they sense something different. And I was different. No mom waiting at the school gate, no dad showing up for the parent-teacher meetings, no cheerful family photos to show during family week. At first, I told them my parents traveled for work. But that answer stopped working when years passed and no one ever saw them. So the lies grew. I told one girl that my parents were missionaries overseas, somewhere deep in Africa helping people. "They don't always have signal," I'd say, pretending to laugh like it was no big deal. Sometimes I said they worked with doctors across the world. It got easier to lie than to say, "I don't know where they are," or worse, "They left me." But the truth? I was angry. Deeply, silently angry. Angry at them for vanishing. Angry at Uncle Ray for never giving answers. Angry at myself for still missing them after everything. That anger turned inward sometimes. I remember staring in the mirror, trying to imagine what it was about me that made them leave. Was I too quiet? Too loud? Not good enough? I started writing letters to them. Pages and pages, pouring out everything I couldn't say out loud. I never mailed them, I didn't have an address. But writing helped at least a little. In those letters, I told them about my school days, the things I was scared of, the birthdays they missed. I'd imagine Mom reading them with tears in her eyes, or Dad feeling sorry for what they'd done. It was the only place I let myself be honest. Sometimes in crowded places, grocery stores, malls, train stations, I'd find myself searching faces. Every now and then someone with a similar haircut or walk would catch my eye. My heart would leap for just a second before reality pulled it back down. I even dreamed about bumping into them accidentally on the street. They'd look shocked, apologize, beg for forgiveness, and explain everything. But those dreams always ended the same. I'd wake up with tears on my pillow and the same heavy silence in the house. School events were torture. Watching kids run into their mother's arms with handmade cards, or seeing fathers pick up their children with proud smiles. I'd just stand in the background, clapping politely, pretending I didn't care. But I did. I cared deeply. Every hug I didn't get, every lunch I ate alone, every time a teacher asked, "Will your parents be attending?" Those moments left little cracks in me. Cracks that no one could see, not even Uncle Ray. And so I learned to pretend. To smile, to nod, to act like I had it all together. But inside, I was just a kid waiting for someone to come back and explain why I'd been left behind. Getting that scholarship felt like the first breath of air after years of drowning in silence. I still remember the envelope trembling in my hands, the words on the page blurry because my eyes filled with tears before I could even finish reading it. It wasn't just about getting into college. It was about finally stepping into a life I could claim as my own. A life that I had built. Not one that had been handed to me or left behind like a suitcase on a stranger's doorstep. Uncle Ray helped me pack. He didn't say much, he never did, but I saw the pride in his eyes when he loaded my suitcase into his truck. That ride to campus was quiet but comfortable. When we pulled up, he handed me an envelope with a little cash inside and said, "In case you need anything extra." I hugged him, not knowing how to say thank you for all the years he had tried. Imperfectly, silently, but with a kind of quiet loyalty. College was a fresh start. No one there knew my past, and I didn't have to explain anything unless I chose to. For the first time, I stopped pretending. I told a few close friends that my parents had died when I was younger. It wasn't the full truth, but it was closer than the lies I'd told before. And honestly, in some ways it felt true, because the people who dropped me off at Uncle Ray's never came back. Whoever they were then, they were gone. My scholarship covered most things but not everything. So I worked part-time in the campus library. Quiet stacks of books, the smell of paper and ink, people whispering around me. It became a safe space. I liked the silence. It gave me room to think, to process, to heal in small, slow ways. I budgeted carefully, skipped nights out, and wore the same coat for 3 winters straight. But I never asked for help. I couldn't. I'd learned too young what it felt like when people leave, and I didn't want to owe anyone anything ever again. When it came to relationships, I kept people at arm's length. I laughed at the right jokes, went on a few dates, but I always pulled back when things got close. Something in me was too afraid. Afraid they'd leave too, or worse, see the broken pieces I worked so hard to hide. In my dorm closet, taped to the inside where no one could see, I kept one old photo. It was of me at age 7, sitting between mom and dad on the front porch, ice cream dripping down my chin, all of us smiling like we were frozen in time. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. No matter how much they'd hurt me, that photo was proof they were real. That at least once they had loved me. Or maybe I just needed to believe they had. The morning of graduation felt like a dream. I had ironed my gown the night before, careful not to wrinkle the sash that marked me as an honors student. As I pinned my hair back in place, my hands trembled slightly, not out of fear but disbelief that I had made it. Every test, every paper, every late-night shift at the library had led to this moment. I stood taller that day, not just because of the heels, but because I knew I had built this life brick by brick, with no help from the people who were supposed to be there from the start. Uncle Ray sat in the front row. He wore his old brown suit, the one he reserved for important days. Weddings, funerals, and now my graduation. When my name was called and I stepped up to receive my diploma, he stood up and clapped louder than anyone. I caught his eyes, wet with emotion, and smiled. For a second it felt like that moment belonged just to us. But then as I walked down the steps and into the crowd, something shifted. I heard heels on concrete. I looked up. The people around me seemed to part without knowing why, like a tide making way for a storm. And there she was. My mother. She stood there like she'd never left. Her hair was pulled back, she wore soft makeup and a pearl necklace that shimmered against her skin. She smiled like this was any other family celebration. "Sweetheart," she said, tilting her head slightly. "You look beautiful." My chest tightened. For a second I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. It was like someone had dropped ice water down my spine. My hands clenched at my sides. I heard the laughter and chatter of other families behind us, but in that moment the world went silent. Why now? That question echoed in my mind, loud and sharp. Why show up today after 9 years of nothing? After birthdays missed, letters unanswered, and long nights crying into a pillow wondering what I had done wrong? I took a step back. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just looked at her, then turned and walked away. My heels clicking sharply against the pavement. The crowd looked confused, a few heads turned. Uncle Ray started to move toward me, concern in his eyes, but I shook my head. I needed space. My mother didn't follow. She didn't call out. She just stood there, still smiling, like she expected this to be easy. Like she expected me to run into her arms and pretend the last decade hadn't happened. But I wasn't 12 anymore. I had spent too many years surviving without her to let her rewrite the story now. And I wasn't about to let her back in just because she finally decided to show up. That night, after the ceremony and the dinner with Uncle Ray, I sat on the edge of the bed in my small apartment, still in my graduation dress. The excitement from the day had faded into a strange emptiness. My diploma was on the desk, my cap tossed aside, and a slice of untouched cake sat melting on a paper plate. Then my phone buzzed. A message. From a number I didn't recognize. My heart sank when I saw the first words. "It's your mom." My fingers hovered above the screen, frozen. I stared for a few seconds before finally tapping to open it. It was long. "We didn't know how to tell you. We were young and scared and we made mistakes. We thought you'd be better off with Ray. He was stable, responsible. We weren't. We didn't want to mess you up any more than we already had." I kept reading line after line, my chest tightening with each word. Not a day passed that I didn't think of you. I missed you every single day. I kept your drawings. Your little voice still lives in my head, especially the way you said, "See you soon," when we dropped you off. We didn't mean to disappear. We just didn't know how to fix what we broke. And then so much time passed and it became harder to come back. But I saw you today and I couldn't stay away any longer. Please don't hate me. Can we please start over? My eyes blurred. I hadn't even noticed I was crying until I felt a tear slide down my cheek. Was it guilt? Or rage? Or just sadness that had been buried for so long I didn't even recognize it anymore? I clutched the phone to my chest, trying to steady my breath. For years I had imagined letters like this. Messages. Apologies. Something that would explain everything. And now it was right here. On my screen. But it didn't bring peace. Just more questions. More confusion. The little girl inside me wanted to scream, to hug her, to ask her where she'd been. But the woman I had become, strong, guarded, scarred, wasn't ready. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The next morning I agreed to meet her. I picked the diner near campus, not too crowded, not too quiet. It had these red vinyl booths and smelled like burnt coffee and syrup, the kind of place where serious conversations felt a little less heavy. She was already there when I arrived, sitting near the window. Her hands were wrapped around a mug of tea, and for a moment she looked just like any other woman waiting for her daughter. But this wasn't just any meeting. This was 9 years of silence sitting between us. I slid into the booth across from her. She looked up, eyes red and puffy. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she said softly. "I almost didn't," I replied, keeping my voice calm but firm. She nodded like she expected that. There was a long pause before she finally spoke again. "I owe you everything. An explanation, and an apology." I didn't interrupt. I wanted her to say it. All of it. She took a deep breath. "Your father. He never wanted children." "Not really. When I got pregnant he panicked. We were already struggling. Money was always tight. And when you were born things got worse. We fought constantly. I tried to protect you from it, but I knew you saw more than you should have." I stayed quiet, watching her unravel. "When you were 12 we were on the brink of losing everything. Your uncle, Ray, he offered to take you for the summer just to give us space to figure things out. But your father, he made it clear. He didn't want to bring you back. He said we were doing you a favor, giving you a better life. I didn't fight him hard enough." She wiped at her eyes with a napkin, her voice shaking. "I told myself we'd come back. That we'd fix it and come back for you. But we didn't. And the longer we stayed away the harder it became. I was a coward. I let time build a wall between us. I didn't know how to face you after that." I stared at her, my hands flat on the table. "You chose the easy road," I said, my voice low but steady. "You handed me off like luggage and walked away. I didn't get to choose anything. I had to survive." She looked down, lips trembling. "You missed everything," I continued. "My birthdays. My first heartbreak. My first job. Every single time I needed you, you weren't there. I had to make up stories to protect your memory because the truth hurt too much." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I am so sorry," she whispered. I nodded slowly. "I know. But sorry doesn't change the past." She reached across the table, but I didn't move. Some wounds run too deep for a quick fix. And some truths arrive far too late. That night, after the diner, I sat in my small apartment, the quiet weighing down on me. My graduation photo was framed on the wall, the one with me in my cap and gown, smiling next to Uncle Ray. My parents weren't in it. They weren't even a thought in that moment. I stared at the photo for what felt like hours, my mind racing. I had heard her words, all the reasons, all the excuses. I had felt her tears, seen her regret. But I couldn't shake the feeling of abandonment. How could I? I had spent my entire life without them, forging my own path in the world. Was this what healing was? Was forgiveness the answer? Or was I just expected to let go of all the anger and pain because she said sorry, because she was finally ready to show up? I picked up my phone. Her message was still on the screen, the words still echoing in my head. "Can we please start over?" But something inside me resisted. I couldn't erase the years I'd spent surviving on my own, the years Uncle Ray had been both my guardian and my hero. He had been the one who put in the work, the one who cared for me when I had no one else. I started typing slowly, feeling each letter as if it was a decision I might regret. "You may be my mother. But he raised me." I paused, my thumb hovering over the send button. For a moment I thought about adding more, about explaining everything that had been building inside of me for years. But I didn't. There were no words that could make her understand what it had been like. She wasn't here for any of it. I attached a photo of my diploma to the message. Just me standing proudly with Uncle Ray, the only family I had truly known. I hit send. And then I sat back, staring at the screen, waiting for a response I didn't need because in my heart I had already made my choice.